Check this out. Today we've got a 1999 C5 in the shop with 240,000 miles on it, and it's helpless because the clutch is shot. In fact, the clutch is so weak that when I took it for a test drive at 55 miles per hour, if you tap the fun pedal just a little bit, it slips.
You might smell something burning coming from the front of the car as the clutch slips.
Apparently the original LS1 engine is long gone. It currently has an iron block 6-liter LS engine, which we're told is not an LS2, although it does seem to have an LS2 intake manifold on it. It does have a set of Dart aftermarket aluminum heads, so that's pretty cool. And of course, it's got a set of wrapped long tube headers. So all of that is very interesting. What's also interesting is that the previous owner says it's got a center force clutch in it with a dual friction disc, which I think means the disc has both organic material and carbon composite material on the same clutch disc. When I took it for a test drive, I noticed that the clutch pedal is very difficult to push in, much more challenging than the clutch pedal in my C5, which has the monster LT1S twin disc. So I absolutely believe that this thing has an aftermarket clutch in it, and I'm going to be very curious to see just how burnt up the clutch, the pressure plate, and the flywheel are when we get it all apart. Lastly, when I got back from the test drive, I pulled the C5 into the shop and I had it in neutral with the clutch out, and I let the engine rev at idle all the way up to 2,000 RPMs, and the torque tube in this thing seems very quiet. Very smooth. So I think when we pull it apart to inspect it, I think we're gonna see it's in pretty good shape. So obviously I have a lot of work to do to get the clutch out of this thing. I'll be removing the rear cradle, the differential, the torque tube, and of course the clutch. While we're in there, I'll be replacing the rear main engine seal, and I'm also gonna do a set of valve stem seals while we're waiting for parts. So enough gum flapping, let's get going.
Toys for life.
A job like this can be a bit of a daunting task, so I think the best thing to do is just grab the elephant by the tail and start unbolting things. All right, so to get the torque tube out, we're absolutely gonna have to drop the mid pipe in the tunnel plate that's up here with the 400 volts. Got a nice X pipe, by the way. And I don't know if it's 100% necessary, but it's not that hard since you have to take the mid pipe out anyway. I removed the mufflers. That just gives me more room up in this area when it comes time to drop the differential. To get the mid pipe off, he's got these really decent clamps here. So those will have to come off. Moving towards the back, we've got the regular mount onto the torque tube with the spring, so we'll remove those. And then just 2 bolts here, 2 bolts over here, and then on the back, we just have to remove the bolts for the hanger. There's 1 on each side. Well, it was going okay until this bolt decided it wanted to be stripped and won't come out. So it's going to have to succumb to a little extra pressure. Well, there's 5 minutes of my life that I won't get back. Looks like we got a set of Borlas, which are kind of nice. Here's the other side. And of course, we've got the X pipe with these quick release clamps. Anytime I have the opportunity to inspect the catalytic converter's cells to make sure they're not melted or broken, I do. And these look to be in very good condition. Couple things here, looking at the headers as they connect to the mid pipe here. One, the bottom of the bell housing cover is missing a few bolts. And this is what sucks about headers. How are you going to get that bolt out? That one's missing. Those 2 are missing. That one's impossible to get out. And so is the one back here. So we do have to unbolt the headers so that we can tip them down and be able to get this bell housing cover off. So I'll take the header bolts out to drop the headers down, and since I'm going to do valve seals, I'm going to have to take the valve covers off, which means the spark plugs will have to come out for the compression hose to hold up the valves. So basically right now I'm going to take off the spark plug wires and the spark plugs and drop the headers down to make sure I can get the bell housing cover bolts off that are underneath. So this is interesting. Here's the spark plugs in order, cylinder 1 and cylinder 2. Definitely a lot of oil intrusion in these front two cylinders. So I would definitely, this is to the owner, I would definitely go through, since this engine's been re-engineered, as you know, and make sure the PCV system is good and that catch can system is good, because I think a lot of oil is getting passed. All right, so I've got the headers dropped down, and now I can take the inspection cover bolts out, and that's really bizarre. The cover is supposed to have 8 bolts holding it on, but someone must have lost a few because 4 are missing. Here's what we have for a clutch, and after taking a quick look, it's definitely a Centerforce product, and it has their little metal blocks that help to provide extra grip at higher RPMs.
All 3 of these clutches utilize our patented Centerforce technology, such as our centrifugal weight system here. Now these act as a function of RPM. As RPM increases, these weights pull up on the clutch fingers and increase holding capacity and clamp load of the pressure plate.
There's definitely a lot of grime behind the flywheel. I'm not 100% certain where it's coming from, but with this much oil leaking out, it just makes sense to replace the rear main seal and the barbell while we have it apart. And here's a positive surprise. Instead of that cheap stamp steel tunnel plate, this one's got an aftermarket one made out of aluminum, and it's pretty stout. So that's nice, although there is a broken bolt that somebody left. Time to remove the shifter, so we'll be able to drop the torque tube out. Just want to show the owner that this is already broken. Somebody else got a little overzealous with this. These nuts have to come out right here. Then we got a screw up here to remove. Pop this bezel off, and this comes off. And actually this is already loose. So somebody's kind of already butchered this by being too aggressive. But we'll do our best not to make it any worse. And actually you can see these are kind of broken too. This plastic does get very brittle, so you absolutely have to be very careful with it. Moving on to the rear end of the car, the next thing to be removed are the brake calipers. There are just 2 18mm, I believe, bolts holding the caliper to the knuckle, and then be sure to hang the calipers using something like a piece of wire so the brake hose doesn't have to support all of the weight. For this parking brake cable, you just have to slide this little cable end off the lever. We'll disconnect the wire that goes to the wheel speed sensor, and then we'll pinch in here with the pliers and pop this out. I'm using a 1/2 inch for these. Now let's grab the A-arm bolts. I already broke these loose with a breaker bar. This one back here is kind of tight, so if you have an 18mm ratcheting wrench, it's going to save your bacon. To get the axles out of the differential, and I'm going to do that because I'm going to drop the cradle, which is the way I like to do it. In order to do that, I just stick a pry bar between the axle and the differential housing and pop it out. It just has a snap ring in there. so it pops out, you know, with a little bit of force. On the transmission, I'm going to be splitting the case and resealing it here between the back half and the main body. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the fluid because it's easier now and I won't make a mess later when it's on the ground. The torque tube bolts to the bell housing are 1/2 inch as well, which again is kind of odd. There's a total of 5 of them. These upper ones are the hardest ones to get to, but just use a little extension with the universal on the end and it'll come right out. Next, I'm going to disconnect the clutch slave cylinder line from the clutch master cylinder line, and to do that you need this simple tool. You can buy these tools, by the way, but I made this one years ago and it works pretty good. It's super simple. There's a little plastic ring that needs to be pressed into the connection, and once it is, the lines will separate. Almost ready to drop the cradle. Time to take a peek all the way around the perimeter of the cradle and unfasten any wiring and brake lines that may still be attached to the cradle. This car's subframe has been removed before, so if yours is a virgin, it'll definitely be different than this. For reference, I also like to take good video footage of this entire area so that when it comes time to put it back together, I know exactly where all the lines and the wiring harnesses should go. Now it's time to drop the cradle, and there are 4 large nuts, 2 on each side, that need to be removed that allow the cradle to drop. There are also 2 nuts that hold the cradle to the rear differential mount that I forgot to record, so don't forget about them. When you remove the nuts, complete a couple of turns on each nut at a time and work your way around the perimeter so the cradle doesn't have to flex too much and possibly crack. Uh-oh, Toys for Life is removing nuts with nothing supporting the cradle. Did he forget about this critical step? Is this the end of Toys for Life videos as he's crushed by the cradle that drops down on him? Find out in part 2, which will be in your upper right hand corner as soon as it's released. You don't want to miss that as I complete this huge job of replacing the clutch, the rear main seal, and giving the torque tube's internal bushings and bearings a detailed inspection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and hit that thumbs up if you enjoy this type of hardcore C5 Corvette repair. And most of all, thanks for watching.